Hello, Tank Blitzers. It's Littlefinger. Happy Friday, June 9th. And that means time for another store review. And yes, back-to-back weeks. And that is because there's a new section in the store called Lost and Found. And I wanted to go ahead and talk about that. As you can see on the screen, we have a lot of stuff going on right now. We touched on it last week. Retropia is a 90-day event in which there's several tanks that you can get for quote-unquote free. However, what this event does that's different, almost might say evil, in the sense that it's going to dangle these tanks in front of you for 90 days, and it is going to be near impossible to get all of the tanks and the equipment unlocked. As you can see, I've already got the first tank here, the Magnet. And what's different about this is that you then have to unlock each and every part of the tank as you go up. So you can see here, I still need 5,220 of these kit coins, they're calling them, just to max out this tank alone at tier 7. Now, again, this is a long event, so don't get discouraged, but don't think that you're going to be able to get this regressor and get all the way to the end here. Because look at this, 71,000 kit coins. And we touched on it last week, how to get them. So you can get almost 4,000 by the battle pass. Multiply that times 3 because we've got a 90-day event. And we've got events and quests, which you can get some for. You can get them from your clan missions at max 320 kit coins a week if you're in an active clan, which I am not. And then you can get 500 per week just for playing a few ratings battles. Essentially, you get 50 per win. So it's not too difficult to max that out. And then you can get 500 for playing tournaments. But that's a long way from 70,000 of these. So just keep that in mind. And what kind of interested me is we had a fairly easy quest that had the kit coins on first, but now we've got a new quest to win 40 battles here, and there's no kit coins in it. And I don't quite understand the logic behind that. So that's going to take up, 9 more days of our 90 days for Retropia here. And you can see here on my screen, I did purchase the subscription. Here's an example of what it looks like. You have to come in each and every day. So that'll be available in an hour and a half. And you have to click on it and claim that gold each and every day. That was almost 1,000 gold per dollar. I think just over 1,000 gold per dollar, which is why I did that. We've got the current battle pass here, which has those kit coins, which I mentioned. They are pretty up early in the levels, so it's fairly easy to get them, but 2 of them are on the bottom, so you're going to have to purchase the battle pass in order to get that. And then the tank is essentially the Skoda T25 and some different camo. And finally, here is the Lost and Found event, which looks like we're getting bells here. So just want to keep these numbers in mind, because this event, you're going to have to spend a lot of gold in order to get a potentially quote-unquote free tank out of this. We've got the Churchill 8 for 150 of these bells. We've got the Kuhn's Panzer at 300. So the tier 7s are 300. The tier 6 here is 200. The P4306. Then the year 5 event tanks here. And this is based upon their tier. So this is the tier 7, tier 6, and tier 5. Now, just keep in mind here, in my opinion, for the cost and the ability of the tank, I think the P4306 is superior to the Kuhn's Panzer, which would be 300 at tier 7. Kuhn's Panzer is a good tank. It's just a little bit more expensive. And I believe this is a light tank. And I don't like quite the gun or the pen on it as much as I do the all-around playability here of the P43. The Wi-Fi tanks are good and fun, but overall, I would, if you're trying to do this event, either of these 2 is where you want to go. So let's just keep in mind here when we get to the store, 200 bells. All right, and there's one other thing I want to talk about, because there's also an event for a free Renault tank. But what I've realized and learned is that you cannot have 2 subscriptions active at the same time. So this is a 10-day event. Again, you're going to have to come in and claim those 10 certificates. Once you get all 100 certificates, you can then collect the tank. So I cannot use this without giving up this one, and since the 14 days, I'm halfway through it, we'll have to wait for that to expire, and then I can do the Renault. So let's hop into the store here, and here is Lost and Found. The deals here are a little bit better than down below in the resources section. Nothing really stands out for me. But I just want to point out, say like with this one, 500 gold for 7 days. Not really going to comment on whether or not that's a good or bad deal. It's hard for me to know. Just with so many free days given out, so many certificates for premium hours, if you manage those correctly, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't need to be buying too much premium time these days. But even still, you're only going to get 3 of these bells here with that. Here, if you miss a day on the Renault, you can purchase 10 of those certificates for 500 gold. And then let's get into just kind of talking a little bit about these here. So 75, remember we're shooting for 200, so that's $12, and you're not even halfway there. You are going to get almost 2,000 kit coins out of that, and 7,500 gold. I believe that works out to be just over 600 gold per dollar. I do like the fact that if you're short on premium time, you can add that in. You've got 10 5x bonuses, so make sure that you are playing your tech tree tanks with those, the ones that you are grinding. But again, we look at the next one down here, 2,500 plus the 50. You're only getting 50 of the bells, so it's not quite near as good of a deal gold per dollar wise. But again, you're going to have to purchase several of these. So there are some tanks in here. We'll go through those and talk about them next. Chieftain Mk. Everybody knows about this tank. It is one of the more sought after tier 10 tanks, I would say. It has a wonderful play style, good armor, plays lovely hull down. The one weak spot is if you're stationary, the hatch is a weak spot, so you've got to make sure you keep moving this thing back and forth. And for 15,000 gold here, you're going to get 86 of those bells. That's the price we've seen for this tank. I think maybe we've seen it with the camo for 15,000, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's probably the lowest that we'll see this tank, maybe outside of an auction, but it seems like Wargaming has set that as a hard limit for this tank. We now have the T55A, which is a tier 9 medium tank. It's not a bad tank, however, it's very similar to the Tech Tree tank, so it's hard to recommend spending 9,000 gold on it. Tier 9 is kind of an awkward tier, as we know. There's no benefit for playing tournaments. You're either at tier 8 or tier 10, oftentimes you are bottom tier. But it's nice when you are top tier in this tank. The Rumpanzer is an interesting one. Again, 8,500 gold is a little bit high for a tier 8 tank. I don't play this tank too well, to be honest with you, and part of the reason I think the armor is not as great as you would think. I think people have figured out how to pen through this blade, and it's a little bit on the slower side as far as a medium tank goes, and I seem to struggle. I'm thinking like Super Pershings. I seem to struggle with the slower medium tanks, but that is again just my play style. So this is one of those tanks that I still have not aced, so I do play it a little bit more frequently. Not a lot, just 1 or 2 games at a time, and I do I know it's not a horrible tank, but I don't think I'd recommend it for 8,500 gold with some of the other tanks here in this list. So moving on, the Type 57, we've got a heavy tank here. And I tell you what, for whatever reason, this gun just trolls me to no end. It's a 0.35 for the dispersion is not horrible for a heavy gun. But I don't know, it's something about the playstyle. It's got some really nice sloped armor here. But again, tier 8, heavy tanks, there's so many of them. And this is just an average price. So again, hard to recommend this one. So we're getting into some more interesting tanks here. We've got the Titan 54D, which has a mechanism called dynamic armor. So when you use the mechanism, this armor pops up, making it more like a IS-3 with that pike nose. And then this armor here on the back comes to the front, giving you a little bit of spaced armor. And you can kind of see here the before and after here of this dynamic armor. It is a little bit on the slower side with the extra armor. But again, typical medium T54 play style here. For 7,500 gold, so the price is not bad for a tier 8 tank. However, you may have several. You may already have the T54 or other tanks similar to this. So just keep that in mind before you purchase it. Now, one of the tanks that I do recommend here is the Object 274A. Only 37 bells. So if you think about it, guys, you're probably gonna have to buy maybe 4 tanks, 5 tanks out of this list if you want to get that quote-unquote free tank. So you're gonna have to spend a good bit of gold. What I like about this tank is it's got some seriously good movement. 7 degrees of gun depression is how it helps it play well in hills. 55 is your top speed. And you've got pretty good gun accuracy at 0.293 before any equipment on it. It's got some pretty troll armor, and I play this at a pretty high clip, over 73% win rate in it. I just find that it fits my play style quite well with its movement and mobility. And for the price there at 6,500 gold, I think this is not a bad little deal. Turtle Mark 1, well, if you like slow TDs, this is the tank for you. Good price here at 5,500 for a tier 8 tank. It's got more mobility than the AT tanks do, and the armor is quite nice, but it's very team dependent because of how slow it is. Super fast firing gun, almost 2,900 damage. So if you put some good equipment on this, I'm sure you can get this over 3,000 damage per minute. So getting this into the right spots, you can get some pretty high damage games. What else do we have? We have the LT432. This is quite the interesting tank. If you look at how small of a profile this tank has, and if I'm not mistaken, it has only 5 degrees of gun depression. It took me a long time, maybe 25, 30 battles to get comfortable playing this tank. It's very unique in the sense that how low you sit in the tank. And I had a very difficult time getting this tank to pen. But just be warned with that. Don't give up on it. It's a fun tank to play. It's a light tank. You've got that good mobility. You've got, where is the speed on this thing? 70 kilometers per hour. But the pen probably is not the greatest here. Only 2,000 damage per minute. 184 on the APCR rounds. Again, it's going to take you a little while to get used to it because it is so unique. But 6,000 for a tier 8 is a good price, especially if you like playing those light tanks. Another good price for a T20 is this tank, again, pike nose. You know, I keep bringing this up. There's just so many tanks like this. at the tier. So you've got the spaced armor around the turret, and it plays much like an IS-3 or IS-6 or any of those Object 252. You know, there's so many of the tanks at this tier. I have played it quite well. I don't know if it's any better or worse than the other heavy tanks, so just keep that in mind. You've got a lot of heavy tanks at tier 8. Maybe you just want to stay away from this one. If you're a collector, go for it. Or if you're looking for a decent heavy at tier 8, this one will fit the bill, especially for 5,000 gold. AMX, we've got the heavy French tank. Again, great frontal armor. We've seen this tank around for quite some time. I think it was in a bundle just recently. Once you get onto the sides, though, the armor is not that great. 2,300 damage per minute, and I just wanted to see what the speed on it was. 40 kilometers per hour, so it's not horrible for a heavy. 10 degrees of gun depression. It's a very serviceable heavy tank, and you know, the price keeps dropping on these tier 8s, so this is another great price for a tier 8 tank. We're going to get into a tank. I almost want to say this is a must own if you enjoy playing light tanks. This is a tier 7 Chinese tank. It's been out for a very, very long time. So I'm a little bit surprised that the price is where it's at. But let's see, you've got 7 degrees of gun depression and 60 kilometers per hour as top speed. Not really any armor to speak of as a light tank, but in my opinion, it is super fun to play with its just good gun accuracy and movement. So 4,000 gold is not a horrible price for that tank. E25 is another fun tank if you're new to the game, you know, and you're looking for a fun, different tank destroyer to play. It's got great camo rating, and this tank has good speed, and as you can see, it has a very low profile, which I guess is why the camo rating is so good. 3,000 damage per minute, only 3.2 seconds per shot. So the downside here is that you've got to be on target frequently. And so the tank, not known for armor. Look at this dispersion, 2.244, 8 degrees of gun depression, 65 kilometers per hour as top speed. So it's fun, right? It gets around the map, it hides well. However, to be able to maximize that DPM, you've got to be on target and have targets to shoot at, which isn't always the case. So this tank, for 3,500, pretty good deal, I would say. Another tank that I do like, certainly not as fast or mobile as the E25, is the ISU 122S. Just have a good time in this tank. Not exactly sure why I like it, but you've got that 3,000 damage per minute, which is great. And you've got 400 per your regular rounds. Your HE is 500. Dispersion is not too far off at 0.322. 6 degrees of gun depression. This tank, you know, it does a lot of things right. And let's see, 43 kilometers per hour is that top speed, so not horrible there either. I don't know why. I'm just have fun with this tank, and I think it probably is because your reload time and the amount of damage you do per shot, it just fits nicely in there. It's not like the E25 where you have to be on target so much because you're doing little damage, and it's not like one of the big derpy guns that if you miss a shot, you're penalized by such a super long reload time either. Maybe that's why I like it. So 3,000 gold on that one for a tier 7 tank, not a bad deal. The Stridsvagn 74A2. What can I say about this tank? We're now down to tier 6 for 2,000 gold. I feel like I didn't look at this beforehand. 6 degrees of gun depression and only 9 degrees of gun elevation. The gun elevation does come into effect on this tank. You know, 3 shells in the magazine, 1.5 seconds between shots. So in 3 seconds, you're unloading a full magazine, and you're doing 160 per shot. So it's quite nice if you're good at autoloaders. It's got good mobility as well, 45 kilometers per hour. But you know, it's not a super great tank, but I think for the price there, it's a pretty good deal. And then the Churchill Mark 6. It's not a tank that I like. It's too slow. Again, you're getting into the British play style, which we'll see here. Reload time 4.5 seconds, 160 damage. Not bad at tier 6, but tank's got big old tracks, which can eat up a lot of shots. Outside of that, the armor's not that great on the tank. And it's just a little bit too slow for my playstyle, and with only 9 of these, it's like, why even bother? So yeah, that's lost and found, guys. And I don't know if there's a whole lot new since last week. The Steel Hunters here, we'll go ahead and talk about that now, as this bundle sitting right in front of me, 7,500. We've got the 5x boosters specific to those tanks. 3 TDs. All a little bit different, which is what I do like. We've got a tier 8, 7, and 6. So let's start with the Dicker Max. Tank has some surprisingly good mobility, and interesting little fact as I'm going through my pictures from the Tank Museum in Georgia. They had one of these there, so it was pretty neat to see those. And I've got a few pictures, but I've got so many pictures, I'm working through them. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it a video worth watching, to be honest with you. But we'll see here, 40 kilometers per hour on this tank. Gets around quite nicely, and 2,000 damage per minute. I enjoy this tank. It's pretty fun. I know it's for sale. Each one of these is for sale individually. The AT-15A is my least favorite of this group, just because, you know, the slowness of this. And then again, if we look here, 3.58 between shots, so it's like you've got to be on target, and there's just so many places people know where to aim on this tank to get the pens. The best tank of the group is this Jagdtiger. It's just, let's see what the damage, 3,300. So DPM on this tank, and it's got effective armor here. You get this thing leaning backwards, make this armor as effective as possible. And the downside to the tank is its mobility here, 38 kilometers per hour. So it's really not horrible, as I thought. But 7,500 gold for all of 3 of those tanks is a really good deal. So that's why I wanted to point that out. So yeah, I knew we still had the AMX here. I've talked about that ad nauseum, so I'm just gonna skip over that for now. Go see one of the previous store reviews if you want to hear a little bit more detail. TOG, the Blastroid, which was a Battle Pass tank many months ago. And then just to point this out real quick here, when we look at these guys, let's just do the math here. So 250 of the gold boosters, and what I do is I multiply that by 15, which means you're winning 50% of your battles at tier 10 to max out what you're going to get from those gold boosters. That's 3,750. We'll add that to the 13,500. That's 17,250. We'll divide that by $42. 410 gold per dollar. So this is really not a good deal when you look at it in terms of gold per dollar. Yes, you're getting the 6,800 kick coins and you know, the 5x boosters, but I don't think that makes up for the lack of gold that you're getting here. So my advice always is to find the 2x gold down below and purchase that. So as we talked about just recently, my favorite of these TDs would be the Jagdtiger 8.8 for 5,000 gold. Dicker Max is a steal at 1,500. I think you'll have fun with that. And then AT-15.8 is for those of you that, you know, like to play on the slower side. We talked about the AMX 30B last week, tier 10. I think the price is still a little bit high for that tank itself. And we talked about those guys so much last time. So that's really getting us through the tanks for this week. You know, there's a lot there in the lost and found, and now you're getting pulled in multiple directions with the kick coins and the bells. You are getting bells down here for gold as well, so keep that in mind if you're looking to score one of those quote-unquote free tanks. Certainly making these a little bit better deal, but again, remember that we talked about this the last couple times. They changed the prices. They increased the price. This used to be $75 for this bundle here, so that took it down to 635 gold per dollar, which is kind of around what I'm saying is the new normal. So if you can find anything over than that, it's a good deal. Yeah, so I'm not even going to talk about the containers. The one thing I do want to point about, I know a lot of people are interested in the T22 here. As far as the lockboxes keys go, again, you're going to have very low chances of getting a tank out of the lockbox, but the keys are able to be used on future lockboxes if you don't use them all. And I do believe, for those of you that are interested in the T22, that it was for sale recently on the web. So go to the Blitz store online, and it might still be there if you're interested in it. So that is going to wrap up the store review, guys. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And of course, get educated, not fingered. Littlefinger out.